Pete.
Hi, ladies. So good to see you again.
We like having you as a frequent flyer, Pete.
Ooh, pass the peanuts. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how long this flight is. We might not get snacks.
Oh, yeah. Bummer. And maybe that's a good thing. Yeah, that could
It
be
could
good.
be. It could
Yeah.
be. Pete, we really wanted you to come on to talk about this wonderful post that you just wrote or released, which is about a friend of yours and a mentor and a principal, Nancy Wheeler. You were marking her passing at the age 86, but you said she worked until she was 79. So we're hoping that you can tell us more about Nancy.
Oh my gosh, where do I start? I seriously could talk about her for an hour. I
Mm,
think, we teach our kids the importance of being a role model and in our own lives. I mean, we always think of, oh, children need role models, but we
mhm,
all need role models
mhm,
in
Hmm.
professionally, as a parent,
Yeah.
as a person. And so Nancy was all of those things to me.
mhm,
And when I was first starting out in teaching, times have changed. I'm glad they've changed the program, but you would get your undergraduate degree, and then you really wouldn't get into the education program until your fifth year, which
mhm,
included taking courses and then finally getting into your student teaching. And I had done some work in schools and I had been a teacher's aide, so I wasn't completely in the dark. But, I knew I had people I went to school with that you invest all this time and then you finally get into the program and you think, gosh, is this really what I want to do with my life?
Hmm.
mhm,
And as a student teacher first starting out, and I don't know if times have changed or not, but you're just kind of assigned someone. So it was a lot of luck of the draw, and I
mhm,
got so lucky. I hit the lottery with two fantastic teachers, and nowadays I understand they divide it in so that your time is pretty equal between two different people,
mhm,
and it's a good idea to have experiences at two different levels. And so I started with a sixth grade teacher named Cynthia, who had a much different style than Nancy, but a brilliant teacher. But she was a teaching principal, and then I moved into Nancy's room, but that was only a 2 week experience.
mhm,
But it was a real, as a young teacher, it was really good for me to see, there's more than one way to be a good teacher.
mhm,
Yeah.
And Nancy was kind of on the forefront of, we're talking 40 years ago. And so in those days, the teacher just dominated the classroom. The teacher You taught lessons, the kids paid attention, and then they demonstrated they learned what you were teaching.
mhm,
And Nancy was much more on the cutting edge of cooperative learning and
mhm,
having kids learn
Hmm.
from each other. So instead of her always being the one that dominated things.
mhm.
Yeah.
And so there's that. I mean, there's so many stories I don't even know where to start, but she's just one of these people that had that special ability to reach all kinds of kids,
Yeah.
whether they were struggling in reading, whether they were gifted children. She connected with her colleagues. She just inspired you to want to be a better person, a better teacher.
Mm, mhm,
Um, and so, in so many ways, she impacted my life. She then became my second principal, and would go in and out of my life in different ways. She left our school district and retired, and then I wouldn't hear anything from her, just occasionally talked. And then I would, be talking to some other teacher in another school district. Oh, we have this great person that's come on into our district recently that's been tutoring kids or whatever. And she just kept coming up all the time. And then after I retired myself, I don't know, we were talking one day and I had shared that I've been in getting into writing a little bit. And she says, well, I belong to a writing group. You've got to come visit us. And so I did, and the rest is history there too. And so I don't know, she just touched my life and so many other people's lives. I mean, it's a rare person that everyone talks glowingly about.
I think one of the things I love about Nancy's story and your relationship with her, I think Wynne and I talked about it sometime recently, is that you grew with her and she stayed with you. Sometimes mentors are kind of situational and they get you through a transition or help you get to that, next level or next phase of your life. But what we love about Nancy's story and your relationship with her is that it was a lifelong friendship from the time you met her. She was kind of in your corner all the way through no matter what your relationship was like, as principal, as, a teacher who was supervising another teacher, as a friend, that's a remarkable thing to have that in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I want to tell you about 10 stories at once, but one I have to tell you about is when she was a principal and a teacher, she always knew the kids that needed that little bit of extra attention. And so for kids that were particularly troublesome, gave you a run for your money, she just had a way with those kids. And so one day she's we were having our weekly assembly, and so the whole school gathers, and Nancy would always organize these elaborate assemblies with including music and art and just this wonderful community spirit. She'd call up some child that probably wasn't used to being recognized, and she'd talk about some incident that had happened on the playground. Always, doing great things for their self-esteem and while also teaching the rest of the kids in the school. Well, one day she's got to do a presentation on earthquake safety. We live in the earthquake zone. In fact, we just had a 7.0 earthquake about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
So that's just part of the drill. It's
Yeah.
not the most exciting topic in the world. But we sit down and it's our multi-purpose room was also our cafeteria at the time. So they finish kids finish lunch and they mop the floor and here we come. Everybody comes out to the assembly, and she's got this lunch table in. We have the lunch tables that fold into the
Oh, yeah.
walls,
hmm
but she has this one lunch table that's out, and she looks around the audience and she's I really think I need some help here. And she hasn't told them what she needs help with, but it doesn't
hmm
matter, right? Everybody wants
hmm
to help. So
hmm
there's a million hands going up, and she's, well, Jacob, I could really use your help.
Oh.
And so, of course, Jacob is the kind of kid that would always disrupt the assembly by some means or whatever. And
hmm
so she's going around, she's picking these children out, and she says, I need you to get under this lunch table. And so they're, oh boy, what principal invites me to crawl around under lunch table? So
Right.
they get under there, and Nancy, who just always dresses elaborately, goes into her presentation and talks about, now if you get under a table and
Mhm.
objects are falling, you will be safe. Now you hold on to those legs. I'm going to give a demonstration. And so she gets up on top of, takes her heels off
Oh.
and gets climbs on top of the table, right? And we're like, what the heck is she doing? She hadn't told any of us what her plan was.
Yeah.
And so and she's talking. She's got all their attention now, of course, because what principal climbs on top of a lunch table?
Yeah.
And she, as
Right.
she's talking, she starts. Now, this is what it's going to be like. You hold on to those legs, and she's jumping on top of the table. It was hilarious, and of course, the kids they're learning, but they're also enjoying this moment. And
Right.
from the back of the room, I was teaching sixth grade that year, and so we're all sitting in the back, and right at this moment, some adult who I'd never seen before. I don't even know if they were a parent in the school or what, but walked into the room and says, looks at me, and there's this uproar in the room. What's going on? And I said, well, it's earthquake safety. And he looks at me and he says, well, where's the principal? And I point to
She's that
the person.
lady. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean
Oh my gosh.
That was Nancy in a nutshell. She just had this way of always knowing how to get people's attention and in a
Mm-hmm.
positive way. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wonder
mm,
if that's one of the wonderful characteristics that helped her grow from a teacher to a principal.
I think so. I think you had one of the questions you had
Hmm.
asked me about before was how easy or
How
switching
graceful.
roles from
Yeah.
Yeah.
a teacher to become an administrator. And I think that's one of the things that she did especially well. She did
Hmm.
not forget what it was like to be a teacher. So
Hmm.
she
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
empowered um, her staff, which
Hmm.
I think, is one of the most important elements of being a good leader.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because I work for all types of bosses, some fabulous, some mediocre, some not so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And I had bosses that were like, well, it's my way or the highway.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and if you rule by fear or whatever, that is not an effective leadership model. And so, Nancy had this ability to find, what were the staff members' strengths, and then she just found a way to bring those out.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
so great. And I love that when I think about in education mentors that I've had, something you said, Pete, really hit like a note of recognition. Almost to a person, although they had authority and power, it's not what they led with. They led with, I don't take myself so seriously. My leadership is more about you than about me.
Hmm.
And especially, I think in education, I think it's gotten worse, my opinion, over time about the accountability measures
Hmm.
and the things that have to be done to sort of track progress, which can be really limiting for teachers. But it makes me think of that scene from Dead Poets Society when Robin Williams is, encouraging the kids to just rip out pages, out of a poetry book. And I don't know, the chancellor or someone walks by and his eyes are like, oh,
Right.
what are you doing? Right.
And then,
But
then
what's
and from
learning?
and from the same movie, because that's one of my favorite movies. We hadn't even talked about this, but
Oh, yeah.
when he gets up on top of the table, right? And
Yeah.
so and he's just trying to teach the kids, hey, there's more than one way to see
Yes.
things, and
Hmm.
Yes.
and this is another vantage point, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But she sounds like she just a gem in every way. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and
and then and then um, uh, when she was outside of school too, she just was like a leader in so many ways. There
Mm.
was a service club in the area that it's hard to even imagine that in 2024. But back in the day, it was only available to men, and
Mm.
uh, and Nancy was the kind of person that would see something that wasn't equal and do something about it. And so
Wow.
and I don't know all the steps she took, but I do know that she was one of the leaders in having women accepted to this club. And
Yay.
then another thing I wanted to share was there was a local basketball coach from our university, and these were kids on, it was a Division II program, so those are kids that have athletic scholarships, but they're not the cream of the crop when it comes to
Hmm.
athletics. But the coach worked with Nancy and her husband Joe and said, we're going to be taking this trip to Alaska, and wanted to know if can you find some work for these boys? Do you have some connections in the community? So they went to work and form relationships with these young men. A lot of kids inner city, kids from Chicago. So and they became like surrogate parents to these kids.
Yeah.
And so she tells us one great story about how they invited um, these young men over for like an Easter brunch, and so they're like, this was a big deal to them, sitting down with the family and such.
Hmm.
And so they finish brunch and they're having a good time, and then they I don't know, somehow they got talking about Easter egg hunts, and a bunch of them had never experienced this before. So
Wow.
kind of almost like on the fly, Nancy decides we're going to have an Easter egg hunt for the basketball players. And
Oh,
so they got a big yard and they went out there, and her husband stashed a bunch of things. Anyway, the way she described it is just hilarious because they're athletes, they're competitive, and so they're running around and dashing outside, and experiencing something they had never had before in their lives. And
yeah.
so she would take these people under her wing, and it wasn't just like for a month or a school year or whatever. I mean,
Hmm.
I would talk to her later and I'd ask her, oh yeah, I'm helping him get to work, and all these things. She just would is just the kind of person you can't help but admire
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
way she lives her life. One of her one of her sayings was that she always said to the kids, um, was let me see, I have to look on my notes here, how embarrassing.
Not
Oh,
embarrassing. Wynne and I have notes all over the place. It's
Exactly.
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Oh, she would use the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote about the greatest gift is the gift of yourself.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she
Mhm.
just totally lived that life
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
set that example for the rest of us.
Yeah.
If it came to like a school project or something, Nancy was not just talking about it. She was always out there on the front lines. And so,
Mhm.
when you were discussing effective leadership, I think that's part of
Mhm.
the territory, right?
Hmm.
Words can be inspiring,
Right.
but actions speak louder than words.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Well,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
that was one of our, our questions for you is of the leaders that you saw, the principals and leaders that you saw be most effective. What were those traits? And you've given us a few for Nancy. She empowered other people. She created relationships. Um, she took people under her wings, and not just briefly, but you know,
Hmm.
for a lifetime. And she gave of herself.
Yeah.
Do you? Those are the ones that I've cultivated from what you've said so far. Do you have any to add to that list?
Uh, I, I just the whole idea of looking for a person's individual talents,
Mm-hmm.
or bringing out the things that they weren't aren't that comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know one of the things I adopted in my own classroom was having tried to get kids build on their self-esteem issues.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So if that meant, if it was difficult for a child to speak in front of their classmates, Nancy was the kind of person that would look for ways to bring that out.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe that would be the first step would be to get have kids get up and sing with a group of people. And then okay, now we're gonna rather than giving a speech in front of your whole class, let's do a demonstration of some kind and in front of the class, something that you already know how to do, that you
Mm-hmm.
feel comfortable and
Mhm.
confident. So,
Yeah.
let's say a child that's really terribly shy. Oh, can you show us how to, can you show us your jump rope tricks? And
Mm-hmm.
so just things like that that are like, okay, you have a successful experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time you just take it a little bit higher. So
Yeah.
um, I
Mhm.
think it's scaffolding, it's
Mm-hmm.
building up,
Mm-hmm.
and
So
so
good.
a really important tool for good leaders.
Mm-hmm. That's
One of the things you said about Nancy that, I know Wynn's probably thinking it too, what you do reading to seniors, and bringing your gifts as a storyteller, as an author, an educator. When we've talked to you before about kind of your service heart and what you do, the thing that I'm struck by sometimes is that, especially right now, people are looking for ways to make a difference. And sometimes the big splashy things are nice, but sometimes the most impactful things are the things that are like right here, right?
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
and that's one of the best parts of my week. I've been doing this for about 3 years, and it's just and it reinforces the idea that we can make a difference in some of the smallest ways. It doesn't, like, as you say, it doesn't have to be anything showy. And I think we've talked a little bit about this before, but I say literature is the excuse that brings us together. And
Oh,
everybody enjoys a good story, young and old.
mm-hmm.
But, you know, afterwards, after I'm done reading for the day and remind first, we have kind of a routine, but it usually involves some time to chat afterwards. And of course, then I pull out my phone and show my latest grandchildren pictures, or if we're reading
hmm.
about maybe it's a dog story, then I try to open that
Yeah.
avenue to get them to talk. And these are often times people with cognitive issues,
Mm-hmm.
maybe early onset dementia, and yet long-term memories are always there. And so then you just get talking, and
Yeah.
you just get the sense of, um, oh, this person cares about me, meaning that
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
they enjoy me being there. But it's not just because I'm reading to them; it's
Hmm.
Yeah.
because we're finding a way to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, is it a big deal? No, I don't think of it as a big deal at all. And I just think of it as a way to contribute on a small scale to
Mm-hmm.
my local community.
Right,
Awesome.
right. Well, I
Awesome.
love these examples that you bring forward of Nancy and how she made a difference and how you've incorporated that in your life, both as a teacher and in your post
Mhm.
retirement. So thank you
The
for
gift,
coming
the
on.
gift of the gift of yourself, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's
Yeah.
while Nancy communicated that to children, then
Yeah.
the adults are learning too. So,
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. And
All
we
and
keep her close by
right?
yeah.
remembering. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you're inspiring us as well, so thank you, Pete.
Okay,
Thank
thanks so much, you
you.
guys. It
Thank
was good.
you.
Thank you.